Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Talk Thursday. I'm Anushka, a student outreach ambassador, or SOA, for the Transfer Opportunity Program at UC Davis. 4 other SOAs are also with us: Janelle, Melissa, Emily, and Yusuf, as well as our talk coordinator, Lisa Overstreet. We will go over UC TAP, TAG, major exploration, and selective majors. And please use the chat and Q&A features, but use the Q&A to ask your questions. But if you have questions specific to your situation, we recommend that you make an appointment or email your assigned talk coordinator. You can find out who that is and how to do so by visiting our website. Now, let's get started. Here's an overview of what we'll discuss. First, we'll talk about terms you'll hear today and throughout the transfer process. Next, we'll review UC transfer requirements. Then we'll show you how to use Assist to explore majors and view requirements. We'll also go over the UC TAP and benefits of having one. Then we'll talk about TAG and selective majors at UC Davis and wrap up with an admissions timeline. Next slide, please. TAP stands for Transfer Admission Planner, and TAG stands for Transfer Admission Guarantee. You use the TAP to keep track of your academic record and file the TAG once you're ready. Selective majors are majors that have extra GPA or coursework requirements, and an articulation agreement is a formal agreement between 2 institutions like your community college and UC Davis. Next slide, please. So these are the minimum UC transfer admission requirements, and you should be prepared to reach junior standing, which is 60 semester or 90 quarter units. And the UC system has a minimum GPA of 2.4, but this varies by major and campus. Here at Davis, we require 2.8 or 3.1 if you're engineering or computer science. The UC system also requires that you complete the 7-course pattern at your community college. And keep in mind that these requirements are just for admission. TAG is higher. Next slide. So Assist is a great tool to explore majors, articulation agreements, and transferable coursework. You can see what you should take at your community college to prepare for your major of choice. Next slide. So Los Medanos College has also created this great tool. You can input the field of study that you're interested in, and it will show you programs at UC and CSU campuses related to that field of interest. As here, we have architecture and environmental design, and it shows all these landscape architecture majors. Next slide, please. Now, back to Assist. In the articulation agreement section, you can input your community college and any UC or CSU you're interested in, and the specific major to see how coursework transfers. And you don't necessarily have to have everything completed at your community college, but this depends on the major, so double check. And if there's anything that you don't understand about these agreements, speak to your community college counselor. Next slide. You can also search for a specific community college course's transferability and see what it equates to at the schools you're interested in. But if the course isn't transferable, you won't see it here. And sometimes if you look up something and there's a footnote or a special consideration, make sure to pay attention to those. Next slide. Now let's talk about the UC TAP and its benefits. So the TAP prompts you to select interest in UC campuses. What happens when you express interest in a campus is that the UC representatives will notify you of visits and other outreach events and opportunities. And when you apply for admissions, you can also transfer the data from your TAP. So you could save a lot of time on data entry if you have a complete TAP. A TAP account also helps your UC reps determine transfer and TAG eligibility. And this is why we tell you to update your TAP each term. Next slide. So here's the home page with some important parts of the UC TAP. The schools attended section will ask you this is what the UC tab looks like. It's meant for community college students, but anyone trying to transfer to UC could benefit from one. And if you want to do tags, it's required. You can create a TAP account at the very beginning of your college career or anytime you decide you want to transfer, but sooner is better. And when you first create your TAP account, we recommend that you meet with a counselor at your community college and upload your transfer plan. Next slide. So here's the home page with some important parts of the UC tab. Schools attended will ask you about the high school you graduated from and all of the institutions of higher education you've attended since then. It will also ask you for your most current school. And if you attend multiple schools, make sure to only select your primary school as the most recent school, since this is how our system determines it. Then there's also the where and when I plan to transfer section. There you indicate which term, what campuses, and what majors you want to transfer into. But say you decide to stay another year at community college, you need to go back to your tab and change that to be included in future communications. Otherwise, we'll assume that you've already transferred. Next slide. So here's the About Me section. Don't ask for demographic information, which is optional, but we do encourage it because it could possibly help you get access to support programs and even scholarships. Then is the coursework tab of the UC tab. You need to report every course that you've taken from every higher education institution you've attended. Also, if you've taken courses from multiple community colleges within the same district, you still have to specify that they're from different colleges. And make sure to list every course you've taken up until your last term at community college before you transfer. Next. When you enter a course, you need to select whether it's planned, in progress, or if it's complete. And if it's complete, make sure to put the grade. Next. So the coursework you enter on your UC tab has to match what's on your transcript. And if a course is from a California community college and it is UC transferable, it will appear in this search function you see here. But if you took non-transferable coursework or coursework outside of a community college, it won't show up there, but you still have to enter it manually using the Add It Now function. Next slide. So after you enter your coursework, you enter exams. We'll have to take it. So this is a summary of what your coursework looks like. If you are a traditional student, this should be fairly straightforward. Next slide. So after you enter your coursework, you enter your exams. You'll have to enter any AP, IB, or international exams, regardless of how you scored, but not the SAT or ACT. You took those. Next slide. Now let's talk about transfer admission guarantee. Once you've completed your UC tab, then you can submit a UC tag, and every UC campus except Berkeley and LA and San Diego offer tag. You can refer to the UC tag matrix, which we'll put in the chat, to learn about each campus's requirements. And these requirements differ between campuses and majors and may also change from year to year. And you can only tag to one campus, but you can still apply regular admission to as many others as you want. Also, so tag is a non-binding agreement. So just because you get your tag approved doesn't mean you have to commit to that school. Next. So in order to be eligible for UC tag, the last school that you've attended before transfer must be a California community college. You should have taken at least 30 semester or 45 quarter units of your coursework from a community college. But senior transfers, high school students, and people who already have a bachelor's degree or higher aren't eligible for tag. But if your tag isn't approved for any other reason, you're still eligible for regular admission. But it's always good to check with your UC representative if you're in doubt, because every year tags get denied because of something preventable. Next. So you need 30 semester units by the time you submit your tag in fall and 60 by the spring prior to transfer. You can't use the summer to hit that 60. You also have to submit the UC application to maintain your tag eligibility, not just the tag application. Also, UC Davis and Merced do a tag pre-evaluation, and what this means is that you'll be notified whether your tag was approved or not in November. But the other campuses only send one final admission decision in spring. But if you're applying to a campus that does pre-evaluation, we advise you to wait until you get your tag decision to submit the UC application. Next. So here are the UC English requirement deadlines by campus for people who tagged in fall 2024. Next. And here are the math requirements. All these requirements can vary from campus to campus, so keep that in mind. Next. Here are GPA requirements by campus. And also keep in mind that this one is usually more specific to certain majors, and some majors may have additional GPA requirements for specific coursework, which we'll talk about more later. So here's an overview of UC Davis tag eligibility for fall 2024. The minimum tag GPA is 3.2, except for engineering majors for whom it's 3.5. And at UC Davis, we require you to be enrolled at community college for the spring, fall, and spring prior to transfer for tag. And it's okay to be enrolled part-time, but you just have to leave a comment explaining why. And please note that you have to meet all of this criteria to stay tag eligible, and everything is weighted evenly. So what is a selective major? Every UC has majors with specific coursework and GPA requirements in addition to the general requirements we talked about before. But if you're interested in a selective major, you have to make sure that you meet those requirements. And at UC Davis, we call them selective majors, but you may also hear screened, capped, or whatever majors. At UC Davis, every major in the College of Biosci and the College of Engineering is selective, and these following majors in the College of Ag and College of Letters and Science are also considered selective. So for these majors, you'll have to have specific major coursework prep done at your community college and earn certain grades in them. Next slide. So now we're going to go over each selective major. We'll be showing UC Davis classes, but you can use Assist to find what the equivalent of those classes is called at your community college. And if you can't meet those requirements, we've listed alternate majors here to look into. So for biotech, you'll need the Chem series, calculus, and bio. Next. In managerial economics, you'll need econ, stats, and the calculus series here. Next. So we also have this cool major, viticulture and enology, which is the study of wine, but it is also selective. You'll need Gen Chem, organic chemistry, some math, physics, and biology. Next. Okay. So landscape architecture isn't a selective major, but it has other caveats, so we included it here. When you first transfer to landscape architecture, you'll be admitted into pre-landscape architecture. Admission to the full major depends on a portfolio that you submit. Next slide. So every major in the College of Biological Sciences has the same requirements. You have to take up to Calculus 2 and finish the General Chem and General Bio series. We also recommend that you finish organic chemistry and physics, but it isn't required. Next. So every major in the College of Engineering requires the full calculus series and linear algebra. You also have to finish the physics series, except for environmental engineering, you have to take part of it, and also chemistry, except for computer engineering. But every major in the College of Engineering has even more requirements that are unique to the specific engineering major you choose. And there's a link that we'll drop in the chat, which will show you more about it. Next slide. So any of the math majors have to just take a bunch of math. You have to do calculus, linear algebra, and differential equations and get a B average. Next. So computer science in the College of Letters and Science requires the calculus series and these following computer science classes. And remember that you can only apply to this major through regular admissions, not the TAG program. Next. So from fall 2024 onwards, our new data science major will also be considered selective. You'll need these following courses: math, statistics, and computer science in order to be competitive. And this one isn't offered through TAG either. Next slide. So regular economics majors, keep in mind not managerial economics, those are different. We'll need calculus 1 and 2, as well as micro and macroeconomics. Next slide. So pharmaceutical chemistry students will need the general chem, organic chem, and calculus series. Can't meet that, there is also the chemistry major. Next. So physics majors require the full calculus-based physics series, and the full calculus series with linear algebra and differential equations. Next. So finally, psychology majors will need psychology, statistics, and biology. But if you take the equivalent of BIS 10 at UC Davis instead of BIS 2A, which is the bio for bio majors, you'll also need anthropology or the equivalent of our molecular and cellular bio 10 or neurobiology, physiology, behavior 10 courses. Keep in mind that this may not always be offered at some community colleges, so it is a better bet to take the equivalent of 2A if you are interested in psychology. Next. So we know that this is a lot of information, but don't worry, we're here to help. Continue to connect with us and utilize your resources, such as your top coordinators and using assist.org to explore your majors or see how courses will transfer, as well as updating your transfer admission planner regularly and all the links that we just shared with you. Next slide. So if you haven't done so already, also use the UC Davis website to learn more about our resources in our campus. You can tour in person and virtually, as well as learn more about our majors here. Next slide. So here's a snapshot of the application and admission timeline for the next cycle. This will be especially important if you are getting ready to apply. So take a picture and keep these in your calendar. I'll give you a second to do so now. Okay, now the floor is open to questions.
All right, well, we've had a few questions come in, which I think would be helpful for everyone to hear. So I have a question here that says, if I'm applying for transferring in fall of 2024, do I have to finish math by the end of fall 2023? And so for UC Davis, if you are submitting a tag, you do need to have your math complete by the end of fall 2023. For non-tag students, you can finish it in the end of spring of 2024. But if you are tagging for Davis, we do require that it's done by the end of fall. And you can refer back to that tag matrix. And Emily, if you want to put that in the chat again for everybody, that has the English and math deadlines, along with some other overview information of tag for every tag campus. So I had a couple questions come up about people wanting to know if these slides are going to be available after this presentation, if there's a way to review this. So we're not going to be sending out the slides themselves, but we are recording this and we are going to be posting it on our YouTube channel. So this will be up on the top YouTube channel before too long. So yeah, if one of our SOAs wants to put in the chat the link to our top YouTube, that's where you'll be able to access this later. So we have another question here. Is there a list of majors that don't need UC tag requirements? So every major at UC Davis, other than computer science and other than data science, are available for tag. So any of those other majors, you would need to meet the overall tag requirements. And then if it's a selective major, so one of those majors that we went over as selective, then you need to meet not only the general tag requirements, but also the major specific requirements. And so we can put in the chat again that link to our selective majors. So any of those would have the specific major requirements for tag as well. So there's a question, what is the reason for disclosing part-time or full-time student status when transferring? So I assume that's in the tag where we want you to explain if you were part-time for the spring, fall, or spring prior to transfer as opposed to full-time. And it actually doesn't make a difference in how we review your tag application. We're not judging the reason. We just put it out there because students are typically more prepared if they are full-time before they come in to transfer. So we do want to encourage students to be full-time if they can be, but it's actually not a criteria, so it's not required. So not a problem if you're part-time. We just ask that students give us an explanation as to why, but no judgment as to what that reason is. Okay, so question here that says, I have a selective major that requires a math sequence. Only half of the sequence will be completed at the time of the application, but it will be completed by spring 2024. Is this okay according to the transfer guidelines? So yes, that's fine. Any major requirements can be complete by the end of spring, just not into the summer. So as long as everything for the major is done by the end of spring, that's not a problem. The only math course that has to be done by the end of fall is just the first UC transferable math course. So usually selective majors that have more math required, that's going to go beyond that minimum. You have until the end of spring to finish the rest of those math courses that are required for the major. So I see a question here for clinical nutrition. What GPA must I maintain by the end of summer 2023? So that's for tag. So clinical nutrition is a non-selective major. The tag GPA for actually all majors, selective and non-selective that are not engineering majors, they are all 3.2. So at the time you submit the tag application, if you are not an engineering major, your overall GPA must be at least a 3.2. For our engineering majors, that overall GPA minimum is a 3.5. And then depending on major, you may have some additional GPA requirements within major coursework as well. So there's a question here. If the major is non-selective, then are the only requirements for tag qualifications the 7-course pattern? So it's a number of different requirements, not just 7-course pattern. I'll go back to that overview slide. Let me just find it again. So it's the unit requirement, the GPA requirement, the 7-course pattern, and the enrollment requirement. So for non-selective majors, these are the requirements that are needed to be met for TAG. And then if Emily, if you can throw in the TAG website again into the chat, that's a great resource for everybody. It has all the details listed on there in terms of what's required for TAG. And then it also gives you the links to the selective majors, and then you can see what's required there as well. Okay, so I have a question here for majors. I see there are additional major preparatory courses that are heavily recommended to take, especially for selective majors like computer science. If you do not finish the suggested major courses on ASSIST, but not listed on the UC Davis requirements, will it hurt admission chances? So the recommended courses will not impact whether or not you your chances for admission. So it's just the required courses that we're looking at in terms of admission. So if on that selective major page, anything that is required has to be done. Anything that's recommended is recommended because it helps you in terms of time to degree. So you'll be more prepared if you have it done. We like you to have it done if you can, but it won't affect your chances for admission. So if you're not able to get it done in time for when you want to transfer, that's not going to be a problem in terms of your opportunity to get in. Okay, so I have a question from a student who's interested in applying for spring 2023. The question is, for the spring semester 2023, we have to start the application on July 1. So just to be clear, for Davis, we do not take applications for the spring. We are only open for the fall. But some of the UCs are open to either spring or winter, depending on if they're quarter system or a semester system. Quarter system would be winter, semester is spring, each is a January start. I believe the only campuses that are open are Merced, Riverside, and Santa Cruz. And yes, the time to apply is July. So you would want to get that UC application in next month, anytime between the 1st of July and the end of July, if you're interested in applying for that January start at any of those campuses. I think their tag deadline has passed, the ones that do take tag for spring or winter, but you can still apply for their regular admission process in July. Okay, so there's a question here if we will, negatively judge students if they take 3 years to transfer. Is it suggested to have more credits completed? Definitely not a problem, however long it takes you to finish the things that you need in order to transfer. It can take you, some students are ready to do it in 2 years. Some people have 10 years worth of coursework before they're ready, because different things in life happen that take them in and out of school. So not a problem, however long it takes you to be ready to transfer. It is good to have, as much as you can that's completed in order to prepare, because it's going to decrease your time to degree. So, as much of the major coursework done, beyond even just what's required. If you can complete your general education, all of those things are gonna help you after you transfer. But it really depends on the student. Some students want to just do, the minimum that's required in order to transfer, because their goal is to transfer as soon as possible. And if that's your situation, then that's a good way to go for you. If, you want to have as much done as you can so that it takes you less time to degree, you can save more money after you transfer, then it might be, more economical to stay at the community college a little bit longer and get everything done that you can, so that you have just the minimum amount that you have to do here after transfer. So there's a question here. Is it possible to be admitted if you don't complete all major prep courses, especially if it's hard to access at your college? So if it is a required course, if your major is selective and it's a required course that's listed on that selective majors page specifically, then it is a requirement and you really do need to complete it by the end of spring. Occasionally, we may make exceptions. So if you're missing 1 or 2 classes and you want to apply anyway and see what happens, you can do that, but there are no guarantees. So really, if it's required, you should be planning to get it all completed by the end of spring if you want to be a competitive applicant with us. Okay, so there's a question here. Do we have to complete all of our IGETC GE requirements prior to enrollment besides English and math? So what needs to be done is the 7-course pattern, which is on this slide that we have listed here. So it's the 2 transferable English composition courses, the 1 math, and then the 4 other courses from at least 2 of 3 areas, which are the arts and humanities, the social and behavioral sciences, and the physical and biological sciences. So all of those are required, but IGETC is not required for admission. So you do not have to have that done prior to transfer. If you have it, it's a good thing, because that means that your GE is out of the way. So if you complete IGETC, your community college certifies it. When you are transferring and you send in your transcripts, you send in your IGETC certification, and then we honor that, and you don't have to take any more lower division GE after transfer. But if you don't have time to do that, that's okay. It's not required. Whether or not you have it will not impact your opportunity for admission. You just need to have that 7-course pattern done. Okay. Another question is, are the courses on assist only some of the courses needed to complete requirements for a degree at UC? And yes, that is correct. So what is on assist is just the lower division courses for the major. And so it's all the lower division, and lower division are considered like your freshman and sophomore level courses. And the equivalents at the community college but all of the upper division coursework will need to be taken after transfer, and anything that you didn't complete that's lower division that still needs to be done. So, typically if you come in with all of your lower division coursework done, your general education done, then you are on track to graduate in 2 years. So there's about 2 years worth of coursework left after transfer. So that would be all of your upper division coursework. If you are curious about, what would those courses look like, you can go online to our catalog. The catalog lists all of the courses for every major. So it has all that lower division coursework and all of the upper division coursework. And if somebody wants to put in the chat the link to the catalog, that would be great. Feel free to explore and look around. You'll find for every campus, not just UC Davis, but we all have our catalogs online, and that will have the full list of coursework for any major that you're interested in. Okay, question here. Does the 7-course pattern apply to all UCs or just UC Davis? So 7-course pattern is a UC-wide criteria. And so I can go back to the slide that has all of our general UC requirements. Just so you all can refresh your memories. So these are the general UC transfer admission requirements that every UC is looking for. And so these are the minimums across the UC system. And this is non-tag specific. This is just general requirements to apply. Okay, so there's a question here. When you're applying for fall 2024, are we looking at cumulative GPA until summer 2023, or while classes are going into fall 2023? So for tag, the tag GPA needs to be met by the end of summer 2023. And then if your tag is approved, we hold you to maintaining those things. So you're going to, after your tag application, submit your UC application. Then you're going to do an update that happens in January to give us your fall grades and your spring coursework. So, tag GPA needs to be met at the time of tag, so by the end of summer. But then we're going to make sure that you're maintaining. So we're going to continue to check that GPA. For non-tag regular admission, we are looking at the GPA after fall. So we wait until that update comes in to get the GPA, and that's where we determine your GPA to be at for admission. But no matter what, whether you're tag or non-tag, everything is always conditional through all of your spring coursework. So, all the way up through the end, we're going to go back and check those grades to make sure that everything is still meeting all of the conditions of admission. Okay, so question here, what is the function of the transfer bound website again? I saw it in the chat, but I've never seen it before. I usually use assist. So let's just go back over that part. So on assist, it actually has a link to the transfer bound website. So you can access this website from assist. And what it is it's a way for you to explore majors. So if you're not sure yet, where you want to transfer, who has the major that you're interested in, or you kind of want to look around at different majors, this is a really good website to use. So Assist has partnered with the Los Medanos College to include this on their link. And when you go here to the Transfer Bound website, you can put in your area of interest and major, and then it's going to show you every single CSU and UC that has that major available. So it's a good way to find out, everyone that offers what you're looking for, and then it has links to each of those individual campus websites from there. So then you can just click on that link and read more about that campus's particular major that they have. Okay. As a transfer filling out the UC application, do we have the option to select multiple options for our major, like a first choice, second choice, etc.? Or can we only select one major to apply to? So most of the UC campuses have an option to select an alternate major. So you can put your first choice major down and then also the alternate major. And we do have that option at Davis. Not every single UC campus offers that option, but a lot of us do. Davis does. We guarantee we will review you for your first choice major. And then if we're not going to be able to admit you to your first choice, we might review you for that alternate major, but there's not a guarantee that we're going to look at the alternate major. It really just depends on what our applicant pool looks like and what your situation is, but it's possible that we would. So, if you really do have an alternate major in mind, it's a good idea to include that, but make sure that your first choice is the one that you list as your primary major, because that's the one we'll definitely review you for. So question here, when do we find out if our tag is approved? Is it before our UC application is due or after? So for UC Davis, we do the pre-evaluation. We will let you know whether or not your tag is approved in mid-November. And so that is before your UC application is due. And for students who submit a tag to us, we do want you to wait to submit your UC application until you hear whether or not your tag is approved, because in your tag decision, we give you a lot of specific information as to what all of the conditions are of your tag. So we want to make sure that that's really clear to you and that you've got everything correct and ready to go in your UC application when you submit it. You can have your UC application, filled out in advance. I do recommend getting it filled out so you're not waiting to the last minute to completely fill it out. But just wait to submit if you submit the tag until after you hear from us. So question here, will AP scores determine our eligibility for tag? They can. So if you have passing scores that we're able to use, it'll count for units. Sometimes certain AP scores meet specific course requirements. It really depends on what the exam was that you took and what the score was that you received. We do have a link to our AP chart. Emily, if you can put that in the chat again, that's a good resource. But I do recommend when it comes to figuring out exactly how APs are counted, that you meet with your top coordinator about it. Make sure that you have your exams included in your TAP and your TAP fully filled out. And then we can take a look and let you know exactly how that is part of your eligibility. So a question that we've got here, do only assist certified courses count towards GPA eligibility? So as far as community college courses go, only ones that are UC transferable that are on assist. So those should show up on the TAP in the assist certified list, are going to be the ones that are transferable and count in your GPA and your units. If you have anything from outside of the community college system, then that has to be reviewed to determine whether or not it's UC transferable. So those would also have to be entered manually on the UC TAP, like a non-transferable course from a community college. But for community college, only if it's assist certified will it be included in your GPA units. But very important that when you fill out your TAP, that you have your transcripts in front of you and you put everything that's on your transcripts in there. So even if it's not on the assist list, you still need to include it because we require that everything's reported exactly as it is on your transcripts. Even if you have a W, that needs to be reported. If you repeated a class, that needs to be reported. So everything exactly as it appears on your transcripts. So I have a question here. What if I'm already enrolled in a CSU but interested to transfer to a UC? What should I do? So definitely look at our admissions website and see what the requirements are, so that you can work on getting everything done. Unfortunately, you can't tag because part of the tag requirement is that you be enrolled only in the community college system, the spring, fall, and spring prior to transfer, but you can still apply through the regular admission process if you are at a CSU currently. So if we are not able to complete any of the courses for our major on the assist website, would it affect our tag? Depends on the major. So if it's a selective major, then yes, you're not going to be able to tag if you don't have any of the courses, because selective majors all have assist coursework that is required for admission and for tag. For non-selective majors, though, if you have everything else that you need, the major coursework is not required for admission purposes. So check to see if it's a selective major, if we want to put that selective major link in the chat again. If it's not a selective major, then you don't have to have everything on assist complete, but it's good to do as much as you can just in terms of preparing for transfer, but not required for admission purposes for non-selective majors. So I was told that after it may take more than 2 years to finish. It depends. So that depends on how prepared you are when you come in. So that's going to vary from student to student. You know, if you just do the minimum requirements for admission purposes, then it will likely take you more than 2 years to finish everything. But if you have, you know, everything complete for your major, all of your GE done, then it shouldn't be a problem for you to finish in 2 years. So that's very situation based. So question here, what things would stop our tag from getting approved? So for tag, it's very black and white. Either you meet the criteria or you do not meet the criteria. So if you're missing anything that's required for tag, your tag will not be approved. But if you have everything, then it will be approved. So it's pretty straightforward when it comes to tag if you follow all the criteria on our tag website. But I also definitely recommend for anybody who's planning to submit a tag this year, you know, meet with your top coordinator, get everything filled out and ready to go, and then have a meeting with your top coordinator so that they can look at your TAP before you submit it to make sure that everything is correct and in line. That way, you know, we can help you to figure out if there's something that you forgot to put in there, or a change that you need to make to your schedule so that that can happen for you. So are extracurriculars and community services vital when it comes to deciding who gets admitted? Is this a main deciding factor? So this depends on where you are applying. For UC Davis, for admissions, we are focused on academics. So the extracurriculars, community services, other things that you're involved in is not a part of our admissions decision. However, that is part of your UC application. It is still an important part of the application, even if you're only applying to Davis, because it is a factor for scholarships. The scholarship office uses the UC application as well in their review to determine who gets scholarships. So all of those things are factored in for scholarships. From UC to UC, this varies. Some campuses are only looking at academics. Some campuses are looking at a combination of academics and other factors. So they're doing what we would call a holistic review for their admission purposes. So, that's going to depend. For tag, it's always going to be academic. Any campus that you tag to, for the tag application itself, doesn't include that, but you still need to submit the UC application as part of the process, and the scholarship office will be using that. So would it count against a student if they don't have a passing score on an AP exam? No, that's not a problem at all. It is not going to count against you in any way. We do require that everything be reported, but anything less than a 3 is not a passing score, but that's totally fine. It's not an issue. But if you did get a 3 or better, you may be getting some credit there. So it's important that everything gets reported. So how do I know if a course is UC transferable? Will it be on iGetsy? So Assist has all the UC transferable coursework. So just as a reminder, we go to the Assist page. When you go to assist.org, you can click on UC transferable courses, and that's going to give you a list of everything that's transferable to UC. Everything that's in the UC iGetsy pattern is also going to be UC transferable. So that's already been vetted. We already know all of those UC IGETC courses are transferable. But yeah, you can always check assist, and if you're not sure, or there's some kind of notation on there, if there's a symbol on there, that means there's a footnote that needs to be read, and there might be some kind of limitation. You can always talk to us or your community college counselor so that you make sure that you understand how the credit works. Okay, question here. There's a class that brought down my GPA below the requirement this past spring semester. Would I be able to do a no pass or somehow indicate that I'm retaking it for fall? So if your GPA is going to fall below the requirement for TAG by the end of spring, or by the end of this summer, then you won't be able to qualify for TAG at UC Davis. But I do recommend, checking out that TAG matrix again. There might be another campus that you're meeting the GPA requirements for that you could tag to, because even if you're repeating that class in the fall, that's not going to be in time to meet the GPA requirement for TAG. But for regular admission, definitely. So you still may be an excellent candidate for regular admission. We'll be able to take into account that repeat of the course in the GPA for the regular admission process. So I would still really encourage you to apply to us. But if you're not meeting that GPA threshold for TAG, then you're not going to want to submit your TAG to us, because we're not going to approve it. You asked if you could possibly get a pass or do a no pass in the course. That would be something to talk to your community college about. So if you're able to change that grade from a letter grade to a no pass, then it wouldn't be factored into the GPA, but that's on their end. We can't change that for you. That's something you would have to deal with your community college directly and see if that's possible. Can AP scores over a 3 meet some of the 7 course pattern requirements? Yes. So there are AP scores that we can use to meet those 7 course pattern requirements. That's something that you can check in with your top coordinator about, and they can take a look at your TAP and let you know what's covered for that. So if you're wanting to try to use those AP exams to meet those requirements, that's something that can be done if they're the right courses. Okay, taking biology, I have to take chemistry first as a prerequisite for my biology class. If I'm not able to take biology till spring of 24, would that affect my application for a psychology major? So for psychology, that's not a problem as long as you meet everything by the end of spring. You just need to have the one biology course or the biology plus the other option, depending on which biology you take. I think typically the one has the prerequisite of chemistry would be just the one course as opposed to the other one. I'm trying to pull up the psych page so I can show you the requirements for that again. But not a problem with major if you are finishing those major requirements up at the end of spring. So there's the psychology. So if that's the equivalent to that 2A and you have that in the spring, that's fine. If you're taking the equivalent to the Bio 10, you need to make sure that you also have a course from the other option. So what happens if I finished a degree at CSU and I apply for a second degree at a UC? So most UCs do not allow second baccalaureate applications for, at least for most of our majors. For Davis, we have 2 majors that we allow people to apply for a second bachelor's degree. I would have to look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head what those 2 majors are. They're both in engineering. But those are the only ones that students can apply for us for a second bachelor's. So it would really be a matter of looking into each of the UCs and what their rules are about second bachelor's degrees. But for the most part, you know, you'd be better off looking into a master's program at that point. There's a lot more options for masters than there would be for second bachelor's. You're welcome. And one last question here. Do you know if a website allows you to see the exact amount of people that applied per major per college? So I don't know of a website that has that exact information for you. There might be something out there, but I'm not that I know of. So that wraps up all of our questions. We do have additional time. If there are some additional questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A now. Otherwise, we will wrap things up early. So we'll just give you a moment to put in some last questions, and otherwise we are going to go ahead and say goodbye for the night. So I'll just pull up the very end of our resources here for Anushka to finish up. And while we're doing that, if you have some last questions, feel free to drop them in and then we'll answer them. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa, for answering all the questions, and thank you everyone for asking. A lot of you had some great questions there. So as we mentioned before, you can find a recording of this webinar and our previous webinars on our YouTube channel, UC Davis Top. If you search it up, you can find it there. We are also on Instagram, and you can also connect with us through the Top SOA at UC Davis email if you have student life questions or you have any of those now where we can also answer those. Then there's also UC Davis admissions and UC Davis's social media. Next. Yeah, that's what we have. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.